How's it going, everybody? You're listening to episode number 44 of Trail Tales. My name is Kyle O'Grady. I'm a thru hiker. I thru hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2018. I'm a peak bagger. I finished the New Hampshire 48 and the Adirondack 46. I'm almost done the Northeast 115. That's pretty much my hiking resume there. And this is the podcast where I chat with other thru hikers and other peak baggers and other people who are just stoked on hiking just like myself about their experiences on the trail. Now, Mac Cerullo, a peak bagger and journalist, joins the show. Mac has completed the 4,000 footers in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. He also wrote this amazing article about Philip Carcia's single-year grid for Outside Magazine, and you should definitely go check that out if you haven't already. Folks, this is just a bunch of White Mountain talk, pretty much. I mean, we do talk about the article at the beginning. Mac was actually with Philip when he finished the single-year grid, so we talk about what that was like, kind of being involved in that whole crazy ordeal. And then, yeah, we pretty much just kind of shoot the shit about the whites. I think one of the most interesting parts of this conversation is when we talk about this kind of controversial issue where some of these peaks in the New Hampshire list might not actually be, or they're not 4,000 feet. There's a couple of them, and this just came out recently. There were some surveying errors, and there's kind of this discussion going on right now about what should be done with the list. Should we keep it the way it is for tradition's sake? Should we change it? There's just a whole bunch of stuff going on, and I actually didn't know that much about it, so I was able to kind of learn through him, and hopefully if you aren't aware, you can learn as well. So Mac, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. One of the really cool things about this episode is that I was actually directly inspired to go back to the White Mountains and do a little loop in the Sandwich Range because of this conversation. So my regular listeners might have realized that I didn't, or I hope they realized that I didn't post an episode last week. I needed a little bit of a break, and honestly, another reason why I didn't post was just because I was kind of getting back from this trip, and that kind of changed my plans a little bit. So anyways, yeah, we talk a little bit, I'm not going to spoil it, but about some of the more underrated or underappreciated parts of the White Mountains. And because of that conversation, I knew I was kind of due to go back somewhere, go hike somewhere, and I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to the Sandwich Range. I'm going back to the Whites. So that was really cool. Like I said, sorry for missing the episode last week because of it, but folks, I like to hike, so sorry. Not sorry though. So that was really cool. I gotta say a couple more things before we get into this episode. The first thing is I am very excited to announce that I have published the Trail Tales website. That's right. Now, not only are you going to hear me plug my Instagram and my email, but you're going to hear me plug trailtalespod.com. Now, some of you, if you really, really pay attention to these intros, like a couple months ago, the beginning of the summer, you probably heard me say that I was in the process of building a website, and then I didn't say anything about it for a while after that. Well, I wasn't slacking. It took me this long to build this freaking website. I'm a software developer. That's my day job, so I didn't really want to pay anybody to do it. So I was like, screw it, I'll figure it out myself. And between editing the episodes and, running the Instagram and all that stuff and just hiking and being a person, it did take a while. It was tough to kind of find that extra free time to get it done. So I was pretty much just chipping away at it piece by piece for a while, but I finally kind of finished it. It's finished enough that I'm publishing it. It's live right now. So once again, trailtalespod.com. I feel like most people probably don't really care, but I'm pretty stoked on it. So go check it out. Go try to break it. Go see what things I messed up and what things I need to fix, because I'm sure I've never built a website before, so I'm sure there's something wrong with it somewhere. But yeah, just go mess around on it. Go check it out. Let me know what you think. And hopefully I can improve it going forward. Still got a couple things to do, but yeah, trailtalespod.com. Let's say you don't trust it. Maybe you're afraid it's going to give you a virus. I don't even think that's possible just from going to a website. Maybe, I don't even know. But if you don't want to go to the website, but you still want to give me some feedback or contact me or whatever, you can do that by the usual methods. Instagram. You people should know that I freaking love Instagram, at TrailTalesPod. I post, multiple times a week, all like original photos that I take myself on my various hikes. So go check that out. Email, that's another great way to contact me. trailtalespod@gmail.com if you have any sort of feedback, or if you just want to say hi, let me know who you are and where you listen from. I always love hearing from people. I also want to say that if you send me an email or a Instagram DM, or use the contact form on trailtalespod.com, which is sweet, and you send me some feedback or just, say hi or whatever, I will send you a free sticker, a free Trail Tales sticker. Hell, I'll even send you 2 free stickers, so just let me know what your address is or whatever, and, I'll get those out. I've had a couple people take me up on that, and it's kind of fun to write the little thank you notes and stuff, so yeah. Let's get some stickers out, people. Let me send you a freaking sticker. The next thing I have to say is a big thank you to everybody who donated to the Trail Tales team for 46 climbs. That fundraiser is officially over. You've probably been hearing me talk about it for a few months now. In total, the Trail Tales team raised $2,660, which is so amazing. When I first started this fundraiser, I had no idea, absolutely no idea, how much I was going to be able to raise. I set the goal at $100 because, I just didn't know, and obviously that goal was, just blown out of the water. About $2,000 out of that $2,660 was raised by one man named David Gallagher. David, I've thanked you a couple times, but I'm going to do it one more time. That was so freaking sweet, dude. I really appreciate that. And of course, I appreciate everybody who donated any amount of money, no matter how big or how small. $2,660. That's pretty freaking cool. I'm really stoked on that. So thank you to everybody who participated. The last thing that I want to mention before we get into the conversation here, just real quick, is a couple ways that you can help support the show. If you are a subscriber, if you're a regular listener, I really appreciate that. If you want to go the extra mile and help out, there's a couple ways you can do that. 5-star iTunes reviews are fantastic. I usually read them at the beginning of the next episode. I'm kind of behind right now, and I'm not going to do one because this introduction is running pretty long, but please go leave a 5-star iTunes review. And there's another huge way that you can help out the show, something I haven't mentioned in a long time, and that is the Trail Tales Patreon. Folks, I've kind of struggled to get people to sign on to the Patreon, and I would really appreciate it if you could just go check it out. You'll get some bonus content, and you'll get some bloopers. There's plenty of bloopers in there. I always screw shit up, especially in these introductions, so please go check that out. I have to renew my hosting pretty soon. I have to pay for hosting for next year for Trail Tales. I also have to pay for this website hosting now, trailtalespod.com, freaking sweet. So yeah, there are some expenses. It's not a ton. I'm not going broke producing this show, but it is pretty much a part-time job that I kind of lose money on. So I don't know, if you want some bonus content and you want to just help ensure I can continue to do this, at least go check it out. It's patreon.com/trailtales. Once again, patreon.com/trailtales. Or if you want to go the extra mile, you can go to trailtalespod.com and then go to the Patreon through the links on that website, because that website is freaking sweet. So yeah, I don't know. Please check that out. Let's get into the episode, folks. Mac Cerullo is on the show. Not gonna lie, my voice was kind of struggling for this episode. It's still kind of struggling now, but it's not quite as bad. I've got something going on with my throat, some sort of cold or whatever, so forgive me on that front. I still think it was a cool chat, so let's get into it. Alright, here we go, number 44 with Mac Cerullo. I definitely got that last name right there, didn't I, Mac?
Oh yeah, you got it, no problem.
Sweet. Yeah, I always like to make sure, because I feel like one of these days I'm gonna forget to ask, to double check before we start recording, and just look like a complete asshole and just mispronounce my guest's name right off the top. But I think I did pretty well with that one. Some of you might be familiar with Mac because he is the one that wrote the Outside magazine article about Philip Carcia's single-year grid, and that's kind of how we got connected. And in that article, Mac mentioned Trail Tales, which freaking blew my mind, because I mean, I think I kind of said this on one of the Philip episodes, but to think that like this podcast that I started and still do like literally in my bedroom by myself would somehow be mentioned in like an outside magazine article, even if it's just one line, like that's freaking crazy. And Mac, I know I just thanked you a second ago before we started recording, but I had to say it again because, dude, that's so awesome. That's like I like ran downstairs and like showed my roommates. Like I was just so pumped on it. I had a couple people like message me and tell me congrats or whatever. So, dude, thank you so much for that, and like congrats to you as well, because that was a freaking awesome article, dude. I'm sure a lot of people listening have read it, and if they haven't, they should definitely go check it out. And yeah, dude, just thank you so much.
Dude, it's my pleasure. Honestly, like, I was hoping the article would have a chance to, well, tell Philip's story, obviously, but you kind of deserve the props yourself, because I think I mentioned in the article, I mean, how I found out about you in the first place was because your first episode with Phil was, to that point, the first time he'd ever actually, talked about his story publicly. I mean, I'd been working on it for a little while, kind of, but everybody, people who knew him sort of knew what the deal was, and if you were following his story, as his Instagram and whatever, it wasn't hard to figure it out. But you got the scoop, dude. So you gotta, as one content creator to another, you gotta give props where it's due. So, of course, my pleasure.
Yeah, man, I got really lucky with that, to be honest, and a decent amount of people that are listening to this right now that are subscribers and regular listeners now found out about the show through his episode, or his episodes, because he's done 3, obviously. And so I just got super lucky. I mean, I think in our first one, I kind of talked a little bit about how we met each other, but I don't think I actually mentioned, or maybe I did. It's been a while now. It's back in April, but like when I first met him and heard about what he was like, had just started to do, at that point, I had already kind of decided that I was going to start this podcast after I got back. And I was like, I got to have this guy as a guest. Like, he doesn't even know. I haven't told anybody at this point that I'm starting a podcast. Like, I didn't tell him at the time, but I got his Instagram just because I was like, I want to stay in touch with this guy. And I want to see, first of all, how he does, obviously, because I was interested in that. But I mean, to be honest, like the reason I like kind of got his contact info was because I was really thinking ahead, and I didn't really think that much of it at the time, but I can confidently say now that that's had like a huge impact on this show, on the listenership, and obviously I think those are some of my best episodes too. So like I just got freaking lucky, I guess. Like I don't even know. Like it's pretty gnarly, man. It's pretty gnarly, but the article thing is awesome, and I also just got to thank you for taking the time to come on today. I mean, you actually reached out to me wanting to be on, and I was like, hell yeah, like that sounds awesome. For everybody listening, we're going to talk about the White Mountains quite a bit today. Mac like just finished his New Hampshire 48, and we were kind of talking a little bit before we started recording. I've talked a lot about the White Mountains on this podcast, or my guests have at least, but I haven't really talked too much about like my like 48, so I think we're gonna kind of just go back and forth about some of that stuff later on in the episode. So it's gonna be freaking sweet. Yeah, dude. Just thanks so much for taking the time today.
Of course, dude. I'm stoked. Let's do it.
Why don't you just start by kind of explaining, who you are?
Sure, of course. So I guess I'll kind of cover the journalism side of it first. So my day job, I'm a reporter. I work as the sports editor for the Daily News of Newburyport over in Massachusetts. And so my like daily job is I kind of cover the local high school sports and stuff. And one of the really cool things about my job is that I've sort of been able to parlay it into the opportunity to cover the New England Patriots. So for the last month or so, I've just been like, knee deep in the NFL coverage. And it's the kind of job that, I mean, it goes without saying, it's the coolest thing ever. It's like
dude.
Basically a dream come true to have that kind of opportunity. And so sort of how that article that you've talked about kind of came about is I tend to be very plugged in. Like in my day-to-day life, I'm always on the computer, I'm always on Twitter, and hiking has become a really great way for me to just disconnect and get away. And that's been something I've really grown to value a lot. I didn't exactly grow up as like an outdoorsy person. I'm sure my parents probably wouldn't have ever predicted I'd be the sort of guy who would one day start entertaining, thoughts of doing, these crazy hikes and these, hoping to do a through hike one day. And I don't know, just a while back, I just, kind of got into a little bit, sort of came, I can kind of tell you my 4,000 footers origin story in a little bit, but I've eventually kind of discovered the 4,000 footers, and yeah, and then just like, that just became like a big thing, and like, for almost 2.5 years, it was almost like an obsession, I guess, just something I was just, last year, for instance, I climbed, I want to say, I don't know, almost 30 peaks. Like, I did a lot. I was out there like multiple times a month, and I'm usually doing 2 or 3 at a time. And yeah, then I guess kind of just how I kind of came into Phil's orbit was, just in the Facebook groups and start seeing this Finding Philip guy posting these ridiculous stats about his diatissima. And I was like, okay, I gotta, like, this is crazy. Like, somebody needs to write about this guy. And I was like, well, why not me? So, reached out to him, and, kind of the rest is history. And we can get more into that later, but that's sort of my origin story, so to speak.
So yeah, I actually wanted to talk quite a bit about Philip's article, because one of the things that Philip said to me, I think he said it on the show, and he also said it to me in person, and just talking to him other times as well. He was super stoked that not only he was able to, complete his goal, but he was also able to kind of get, you and I some exposure as well, like in the process. So he did tell me a little bit of your backstory, but I kind of want to hear it from the source. So when you first reached out to Philip, like, can you just kind of talk about how that all went down? Because from what Philip told me, it sounds like you'd kind of been plotting this article for a pretty long time, yeah?
Yeah, that's pretty safe to say. So I first kind of became aware of him around, I don't know, the holidays last year. So sometime last December, he, had posted about his diatissima, and at the time, that's all I knew about him. And, other than that, he'd been working on some pretty intense, projects up to that point, which, I later found out was basically training for the single-year grid. So basically how I met him was the Notch Hostel. They were doing this fireside chat series where, some hikers would kind of tell their story, and he was one of them. So basically, I knew I wanted to write about him, and I was like, well, I should reach out to him. But when I found out about this thing, I was like, oh, you know what? I should just go up there and just meet him in person. So,
yeah, man.
I drove up there. It was like, I don't know, it was between Christmas and New Year, so kind of a random, kind of busy time of year. Drove up to Woodstock, listened to his presentation, and had a chance to meet up with him after, and basically said, all right, let's like meet up sometime. Let's we can talk, sit down, do our thing. It ended up being a while because he was working on his single-year grid, obviously, and then the Patriots made the Super Bowl, so I was like busy with that for a while, which was just it's crazy. Yeah, and then literally we get back from Atlanta, we met up finally about a week later and sat down for, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours, and he just told me his his whole story. And that's when he told me, so I'm working on this thing called the single-year grid. And I was like, oh, geez, like, this is way, way more intense than anything I'd even expected. So, I actually ended up coming up a second time. A couple of weeks later, had a similar conversation of, like, I don't know, another 2.5 hours. And, and then just kind of from there, just, talked to Serena, his boss at the hostel. Also basically started, at this point, I didn't have anybody to actually publish this story yet, so
yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next. I
just started reaching out to every outdoor type magazine I could think of, and thank goodness, I mean, Outside reached out and they're like, hey, we like this, let's do it. And I was just blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, this couldn't have gone better. So I let him know, and I think he was like up on Mount Wiley or something at the time, and he called back and he's like, dude, like, what? Like, are you serious? He was stoked. And then we ended up hiking together. He and I did Mount Isolation. This was towards the end of my 48. This would have been mid-June. Actually, you know what it was? It was the day of Game 7 of the Stanley Cup, which I know you don't really want to talk about, so I'll just leave it at that. But we,
it's rough.
So just chatted some more about the, his. By now he was like almost done, so we chatted a little bit more about that, and then pretty much just put the finishing touches on it after he finished. And I was fortunate enough to be with him on that last day too. I mean, I can tell you more about that, but. yeah, then just it really just was a, like he said, I think on your show, like it was a best case scenario. It couldn't have gotten any better, and it was really really great. It was really cool getting to know him. I mean, most of the people I deal with are coaches, high school kids, and professional athletes and coaches, and by and large, they're sources. They're not exactly people you're like hanging out with. But Phil's one of the rare guys that like he's actually become a friend, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have gotten to know him.
Yeah, man, for sure, for sure. How much of the article had you finished by the time Outside kind of committed to running it?
Yeah, I didn't actually start writing it until after I'd already kind of, committed with them.
Okay.
I had so many pages of notes. Like, I transcribed all of our interviews, all 4 or 5 hours of them.
Philip told me that, and he was kind of saying that to illustrate how much you put into this freaking article, which is so crazy. So you were like transcribing all these interviews, like hours of interviews, before you even knew for sure if somebody was gonna like publish the article?
Well, I knew if nobody said yes, I was going to do it myself. I mean, it wouldn't have been relevant to the Daily News of Newburyport's readership, but I mean, whatever. I would have probably gone for it, I guess, but I'm glad it didn't come to that. So, no, it was, I just, I had a lot of notes, a lot of, I knew that this was a story that deserved a lot of attention to detail. So I made sure to, do the prep work to make it so that it was, put it this way, I had to distill tens of thousands of words down to 2,000, and that was extremely difficult. It was so, like, that story could have been 5,000 words easily.
Yeah, man, you could have written a whole freaking book about it, honestly.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, like, that's absolutely whether it's me or him, like, a book definitely should be written on his journey. It's just, that's obviously a whole other thing. So, yeah. But still, it's crazy. So, I don't know. I don't really know what else you want me to say on that. I mean, that's just kind of how it went.
Yeah. How about, like, honestly, I'm mostly kind of curious about, your vision for it, like kind of from the start. What were some of your initial like expectations or like ambitions, like before you got Outside to commit, when you were first kind of researching and starting the process?
Well, like I said, my original conception of the story was specifically about the Diaritissima. So, you hear about the Appalachian Trail all the time. You hear about the PCT. You hear about all these through hikes. But this is like, not many people know about this thing. And it's insane. Like, some of the stats that you hear, I mean, I don't exactly remember off the top of my head, but something like 240 miles with like a lot of elevation, like
shit ton,
like an insane amount of elevation. And you go over all 48 4,000 footers. I mean, it's pretty relentless. And, it's definitely something that I thought, well, this is something that I think people would find interesting. And, just his story and just like what happened like with him and, his hiking partner on that trail where like, his partner at that time got injured halfway through, but not before like going like 100 miles on the bad leg. And, they got rained on, and it was just super interesting and dramatic. And, I was just thinking, man, this is compelling. Like, and that was my original conception. And then it's like, oh, actually, no, this is just like the first week. I got like literally 10 months more of this. And I was like, okay, well, I'm sold. Let's go. Yeah, man.
Do you write articles? Have you done projects like this kind of in the past? I don't know, like if freelance might be the right word for it. And like, do you plan on doing stuff like this kind of in the future?
Well, for the record, I'd love to try to write for Outside as much as I possibly can, and I've been in touch with my editor over there and basically expressed that. So I hope I'll get a chance to do more.
Yeah, man,
for sure. I'm still looking for another story as cool as his, but even still, no. So I've been fortunate to have a chance to write a lot of really interesting and cool stories over the years. I went to UConn and for undergrad and Boston University for grad school, and I kind of have the whole like news and sports have always been a big part of my background. So, I've written a lot of different stuff, and I'm really grateful to have kind of had that chance to be versatile, because I find that, a lot of times you'll see people who only write about one thing, and that's kind of boring. But the nice thing about if you like do a lot of features, which is the thing I try to focus on mostly, it's like every day you're writing something interesting and new about usually something else. I mean, even if a lot of my stories tend to be related to sports or in high school sports and, football in particular, you can always find some really interesting and cool stories out there. You never know. You just got to look for them. And, my kind of interest in hiking is kind of, I'm trying to find as many cool stories like that as possible. That's, because and unfortunately in like northeastern Massachusetts, we're near the whites, but it's not exactly the sort of thing that people are just doing in the backyard. It's kind of not quite the most common thing.
How far of a drive up there is it for you?
So here's the thing. So I don't actually live in Newburyport. I actually live a lot closer to Cape Cod. That's a whole other thing.
Damn.
So I have a hell of a drive to get to the White Mountains, which is why I usually try to do it. So I'll try to spend the night in New Hampshire before I go, whenever it is. Because otherwise I'm trying to get through Boston at rush hour, and that's just, it's not a thing. It's not going to happen. So, usually my go-to plan when I go hiking is I usually, my family's got a place on Lake Sunapee. So sometimes I'll go there. That's like 2 hours instead of like 4, so that's definitely a big improvement. Or lately I'll just stay at the Notch, or I don't know, if I'm hiking somewhere closer to North Conway, I'll just bite the bullet and get a hotel room up there.
Yeah, man.
But that definitely saves me a lot of trouble in the mornings.
Yeah, I kind of do something similar when I've been going over to the Adirondacks lately. Because I just finished my 46 a couple weekends ago. I would usually...
I was going to say, congratulations. I saw that on Instagram. Good stuff.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate that. I've been like going over and staying at like either like a car campground, or honestly, most of the time I've just been like kind of like stealth camping in various places, which shall go unnamed. But, kind of doing a similar thing where I just, go over the night before and it's especially important over there too, because a lot of those trailheads like fill up super, super early in the morning. Like actually the when I finished my 46, I showed up at the trailhead. I was at the Elk Lake trailhead. I showed up at like 7:15 in the morning. Didn't even get a spot. Like it was freaking ridiculous. So that definitely helps quite a bit. I kind of want to go back to Philip's last day. So I don't have any notes on this, but you kind of mentioned this a few minutes ago. You were there on his last day. So he kind of talked a little bit like, about that last freaking like crazy run he had right at the beginning of July there. How did you kind of like factor in like when did you get there and I don't know, just like describe the experience, because like I can't even begin to imagine like what that must have been like,
It was a crazy weekend. So basically, that was right around the 4th of July. So I think the weekend after the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I actually hiked Mount Cabot on that Friday to kind of start things off. That was my 47th 4,000 footer. So that sort of kind of took the opportunity to kind of take care of my own business. And then basically straight from Cabot, I went straight to the Notch, where I met up with his crew, and basically at that point he was coming over the Franconia range, so he was around that stage of the game, and he had been flying through the route from that point. So like one of the fun things about this whole thing is he had that spot tracker going. I don't know if you were following it, but basically he publicized the link to a spot tracker, so all week you could just pull this thing up and see where's Phil. And you could kind of gauge his progress.
You could find Philip.
You could find Philip, exactly, yes. And, the first couple of days, they were just moving. He and his guy, Jason Lance, I think the first day they covered the entire Kilkenny Range, the entire Northern Presidentials, and the full Wildcat Carter Mariah Traverse.
Freaking crazy.
Which is just insane.
I remember when he was talking about that on our I guess it would be our second episode, it was just like, holy shit, man, you're freaking insane.
Yeah, it was wild. So, I mean, with hiking, it's like, you don't watch hiking on TV. So the closest thing that we get is like, we follow a dot moving on a spot tracker, and it's like freaking compelling, man. Like, it's crazy. So anyway, by Friday, I get to Cabot, I get back to the Notch from Cabot, and it's pretty clear that he's really slowing down. So my original thought had been, all right, well, at the rate he's going, he's probably going to finish on Saturday, so the next day. Mm-hmm. So I'd kind of booked my night, and my plan was basically, all right, well, he's going to show up around what is it called? The Beaverbrook Trailhead at the base of Moosilauke, probably sometime Saturday afternoon. Well, that didn't exactly work out. I mean, he was, needed to sleep a little bit. he and Jason split up. Jason did finish around that time, and he was just he was worked. He was totally done. But he kept on pushing along, but he ended up not actually showing up at that trailhead until 3 or 4 in the morning on Sunday. Mm-hmm. So basically Saturday, I basically took a 0 day and just kind of chilled on the porch and hung out and kind of watched his progress, talked to his crew, talked to, kind of made some friends with everybody there.
Yeah, man.
And and then I hadn't planned on spending that night, so I basically, they were full, so I camped out in the backyard, set an alarm nice and early, and then, just rolled over to the Beaver Brook and met him when he came out of the woods. So he told that story about how everybody kind of called out with like the wolf thing. Well, I was there at the base, just kind of waiting, and it was when he came out, it was crazy. I was like, dude, you've been walking up through this, what is it, like 14-mile stretch or whatever from there to Cannon or something, and just come rolling in at 4 a.m. So anyway, we were ready to go, but he needed to sleep, so we ended up meeting up the next or a couple hours later, and just about a dozen of us, maybe fewer, went up the Beaver Brook trail, and it was cool. He at this point, he knew he wasn't getting the Diartissima speed record like he wanted, but he was, it was everybody. It was clear to everybody he was going to get a single year grid. So he was on another planet at this point. He was, totally wasted off his treehouse, but he was definitely pretty stoked. And once we got up to the top, I mean, it was really cool. You get to see one of the craziest accomplishments anybody's ever managed to pull off in the White Mountains, and you're there. And, I kind of get into journalism mode. I'm like, all right, get my phone, get portrait mode going, and just, try to position myself to get the best picture possible. So, he comes up, touches that sign and just lets out a big old roar. And, everyone up there everyone who was with him was all stoked, and all the random people were just like, what? Who are you? What's going on?
That's kind of what he had said as well. All these people are like, who the fuck is this guy? What's his deal? Little do they know, I don't really want to absolutely compare this to when I finished the AT, but it was kind of a similar thing. When I summited Katahdin, there was a bunch of day hikers up there that didn't really know that I had literally just finished the AT. So I kind of thought of that when I heard that story from him.
I can totally see that. I mean, to be fair though, if you're up on Katahdin, I kind of feel like you should at least kind of consider that as a possibility. Whereas this is just so out of left field. I mean, a few people kind of asked some of the others, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, he just did this thing," and they're like, "Wait, what?" I mean, yeah, it was pretty wild. So, I mean, perfect day up there. I mean, the Musalak never disappoints. For those who don't know, Mount Musalak is usually the first White Mountains 4,000 footer you encounter if you're heading northbound on the Appalachian Trail, and it's basically this big grassy bald. You don't really see too many like it in New Hampshire, and it's just got an incredible view. Really, really cool introduction to the Whites. And it happened to be my first 4,000 footer actually.
Oh, nice.
And just his kind of him being able to finish there it definitely was better than him finishing on Cabot, which would have been if he'd done the final Diartissima going the other way. So, it was really cool. And then on the way down, it's we can't go down the Beaver Brook because Beaver Brook is steep as hell. And, he was I don't know if he would have made it down. He would have probably tumbled down, and it would have been bad.
Dude,
so
that is
we made the smart,
freaking gnarly trail. So yeah, I could see that.
We made the smart call, and we were just like, let's just go down Gorge Brook. So at a certain point, I mean, most everyone kind of just went ahead. So actually, it was me and Phil walking down together for the majority of the descent. I mean, it's kind of worked out that way because I'm thinking, all right, well, I want to stick with him just in case something cool happens. So for the story, but also I was concerned for his safety. I can't leave this guy alone. He could just keel over on the trail at any point. So, definitely was, good to stick together, and it worked out nicely because as we almost got to the bottom, some friends of his started showing up who kind of had been following the spot tracker. And these two guys that he was friends with had, get this, apparently they were at some pub in Lincoln or Woodstock, and they were at a bar watching his spot tracker on their phone, the same way that two guys might watch the Patriots, on a Sunday. And they weren't there together. They just happened to both be there. And at one point they looked up, it's yo, you following Phil? And he's like, yeah, dude. And then eventually they're like, oh yeah, he's almost done. Let's go meet him. So
That's so funny.
shout out to those guys. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Like that was the coolest thing. And then eventually, yeah, Serena and her, Serena from the Notch Hostel, she showed up, and that was like a super emotional thing too. They were both stoked and, had a big hug, and it was crazy. So, yeah, just a really cool day, a really cool experience. And then basically as soon as we got done with that, I drove home and I put the finishing touches on my article, hit send, and called up the editor and said, all right, you got it. It's good. Let's do this.
Yeah, man.
So
yeah,
turnaround was pretty quick after that.
Yes, that's pretty cool to hear, how that all went down from like someone else besides Philip's perspective, like someone else that was there at the end. I'm glad I got to hear that. Like I can't even imagine, dude. Like I kind of wish I could have been there as well. Dude, let's talk a little bit more about the whites and this New Hampshire 48 thing. So I just have like a bunch of like pretty basic questions written down about, your experience hiking the 48 4,000 footers there. And I think we're just going to kind of go through and talk about some of that stuff. And I'm going to work in some of my experiences as well, kind of like I mentioned towards the beginning of the episode here. So first of all, let's start at the end here. What peak did you finish on?
I finished on Cannon Mountain.
Cannon?
Which is...
I feel like that's kind of random, yeah?
No, dude, no. It's
Do a lot of people finish on Cannon?
I think a fair amount do. Well, I'll tell you why. So first of all, people who maybe aren't familiar, Cannon Mountain is one of the more prominent ski resorts in New Hampshire, and it's right across from the Franconia Range at the other side of the Notch. And it's not the tallest, and it's maybe not the most noteworthy, but it's got a terrific view at the top. Just crazy views across to Franconia. There's an observation tower. And the reason I left it for last specifically is because it also has the aerial tramway. So that makes it accessible for people who maybe aren't hikers. If they want, they can take the tramway up. And, so my thinking was, let's leave one with a good view. It's pretty easy by comparison, it's short. It's pretty short compared to most. It's very steep, it turned out, but it felt like a good one to leave for last. I didn't want to finish with like Mount Adams or, or Bond Cliff or something that's like really intense. Like this was supposed to be like a celebration. So
yeah, man.
It turned out nobody who came with me needed to take the tramway up, although actually a couple did take it down just because of time constraints for them. But yeah, it was great. Like, exactly out of it. It was a beautiful day. My wife, my dogs, one of my dogs got to come. A couple of my friends were there. Phil came up too, kind of returned the favor.
Nice.
And it was great. It was just, the only complaint I had, it was crowded as hell. Like a million people were up there, but it was fun. It had always kind of loomed as this like, I decided I was going to do Cannon last a long time ago. So it's been this kind of MacGuffin driving the plot for the last 2 years of my life. So when I was actually standing up there, I was just like, geez, like, here we go. I did it. It's good. Man. I'm over. 48. So it's in the bag. For sure.
That makes total sense now that you mention it about, having people come up with you and potentially wanting to use like the ski areas, transportation up or whatever. I didn't even think about that because I didn't really finish with anybody. Well, actually, I did finish the 48 with someone, but he was just another hiker that I was that was just hiking for fun. So I didn't even think about that. But that definitely makes sense, and that's definitely a good little like pro tip for anybody out there if you want to bring like somebody up who might not like be up for the challenge of hiking a 4,000 footer in the whites, Cannon or Wildcat, one of the Wildcats, I guess, too, or whichever one is closest to the gondola there.
Wildcat D and Mount Washington would both be good options.
And Mount Washington too. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. So yeah, definitely a good little pro tip there. That's cool that you finished with people. I mean, not to like start this pity party over here, but like when I finished my 48 in New Hampshire, I was with my friend Dan, who one of my best friends. I've been hiking with him. I actually started like hiking with him when I was in high school. So for him, like, I don't think he really cared that much. Like, it was just like another like day hike for him. So I got up there. I was like, yeah, but it wasn't really that big of a celebration. And then when I finished the 46 the other weekend there, I was like just by myself, honestly. Like I summited. There's nobody else up there on Haystack Mountain, which was pretty incredible for like a decent weather Saturday. And a couple guys like stopped over for like a few minutes, but I didn't even like tell them or anything. I was just kind of all by myself, which I don't know. I guess that could be kind of interesting too. Like I kind of wish I could have finished one of them by myself and then finished one like with friends and family, I guess. So I don't know. Either way, you know, it is what it is. So this next question, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but like, when did you actually kind of set your eyes on, you know, doing the 48? Like, and when did you like start? And, you know, how long did the 48 peaks take you?
Yeah, so I think I'll tell it. My hiking origin story basically goes back about 5 years or so. I don't exactly know what kind of came over me, but I kind of became obsessed with the idea of hiking Mount Washington. I'd never done it before. I'd never really been up to the White Mountains. You know, I did, you know, kind of whenever I went up to New Hampshire, we were usually either at the Lake Sunapee area or the, you know, the Winnipesaukee area. Mm-hmm. So I felt like, man, I just need to get up there more often, but I just never really had a reason to. And I kind of, you know, started to express that opinion to a few of my friends. And eventually, you know, me, my wife, and a couple of friends, Amy and Mike, who I've done a lot of hikes with, and basically we all kind of agreed, hey, let's all go do a hike together. That'd be fun. So we picked Labor Day of 2015. And I was like, all right, yo, guys, we're going to do Mount Washington. It's going to be great. And I mean, because that's just kind of how I am. I'm like thinking, all right, well, what's the biggest and most awesome thing we can do? And well, them being the responsible ones, they're like, Mac, we're not going to do Mount Washington. Chill out. So we started with Mount Monadnock, and we had a blast. Monadnock's not a 4,000 footer, but it's a pretty popular peak down in southern New Hampshire. Very, very well trafficked. Very great views from the summit. And we were like, all right, yo, let's do that again next year. So Labor Day weekend 2016, we decided to do Mount Moosilauke. Just talked about it. Obviously, great view. Pretty not a very difficult by 4,000 footer standards. Easy to get to. You know, we go up there. Beautiful day. You know, it was like pouring back home, but like there was like the remnants of some hurricane that day, but no sign of it up there. So you just had a great view. And kind of what happened was when we're up at the summit, some AT through hikers were passing through, and these guys were up there and they were just kind of chilling out, doing their thing. And, you know, I kind of started talking with one of them, and this guy was like, just, you know, your stereotypical straight out of Central Casting, like hippie dude, like, you know, like the long hair, the tank top, just chilling there, like total surfer dude vibe. And, you know, I'm talking to him about the Appalachian Trail, and he asked me, yo, so like, are you like doing the 4,000 footers, man? And I'm like, no, dude, like, what's that? He's like, yeah, man, it's like a big thing up in New Hampshire. You just go up and there's like 48 of them, and people do a whole list. It's like a whole thing, dude. And I'm like, all right, hippie person. Like, that sounds dope.
I love the impression.
Yeah, dude. No, seriously, like he was a character. And yeah, I don't know. I just kind of started looking into it, and basically over the winter, obviously, you know how winters in New England are. I'm like stuck in my house, and I just fall down the YouTube rabbit hole. I start following people, and basically just started looking at YouTube videos of every 4,000 footer I can find. And basically, as soon as the snow melts, I'm like, all right, get me out there. I need to go. So I get my crew back together. We do Mount Pierce, and that was great. Mount Pierce is on the Presidential Range. It's one of the shorter ones. It's got a really cool view facing up northwards towards the Mount Washington and the kind of the other southern presidentials. And that's kind of the point. I was like, all right, you know what? I'm in. Let's go. So I think you could say I officially committed when I did Whiteface and Pasconaway as my next one, which is super, super random in retrospect. But, you know, that was a fun one. Whiteface has got all these cool ledges, and, you know, kind of clamber up these things, and then you get a good view facing southwards to Lake Winnipesaukee. You don't really get a view quite like that anywhere else. And then Pasconaway is kind of whatever. It's got some cool views up there too. But yeah, and then after that, it was Lincoln Lafayette. So get the Franconia Loop, which is kind of one of the more famous 4,000 footers. And then then I was off to the races from there. And then I was there's no doubt after that I was eventually going to finish.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of, you just said a second ago, it's kind of random that you did Whiteface and Pasconaway early on like that. I feel like those are two of the more like underrated peaks, because to be honest with you, I probably haven't thought about those peaks since I did them. like I like completely forgot those peaks even exist. Like they obviously like 48. That's a pretty big number, and I do a lot of hiking, but I completely forgot about those, and I really enjoyed those as well. I feel like I actually want to go back to that area and maybe explore some of the other trails like around there, because I remember just looking at the map and looking at the trailheads and stuff, and I was like damn, like they're in the signs, the trail signs. There's just like so much down there that I feel like a lot of people kind of forget about because it's kind of overshadowed by like the presidentials and Franconia and all the popular stuff, obviously. So I don't know, have you ever had a chance to like explore anything else like down there, or even more generally, have you ever had a chance to explore any of the trails in the Whites that aren't like part of the 4,000 footers?
Well, I've done most of my hiking has been kind of 4,000 footers related. So far, the only time I've been down in Pasconaway and Whiteface and the what's that thing called? The Bowl, that whole area.
Yeah, man.
Was for that hike. I'm like due to go back. So actually, kind of one thing I should mention. So around after when the 2018 season started, I actually had been watching so many hiking videos that I was like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to make my own from now on. So I started to do basically my own YouTube channel. Pasconaway and Whiteface was one of the ones that predated that. So I need to get back there and I need to check that place out again. And, it's like you said, it's beautiful. It's very underrated. There's a few other cool places down there, like the Sandwich Dome is another one in that area that I'd love to check out. Mount Chocorua, not a 4,000 footer either, but that's a pretty popular one. Those are kind of all in that southern New Hampshire and southern White Mountains kind of range. Honestly, I've never had like a bad like experience in the Whites. I mean, I've had some less than stellar conditions in the Whites, but all the you can't really go wrong. The whole region is beautiful.
Yeah, man. And honestly, one of the cool things about finishing the 4,000 footers is now like you can go back and explore some of these other areas, because that's one thing I've been thinking about, because I finished them in 2017, July 2017, I think it was. So like I the only time I've been back since then was just on my through hike, obviously, but like I am really going to try to make some time this fall to like go back and explore. Honestly, I might even just go to that same area we were just talking about there. The southern part of the Whites and over by Whiteface and Pasconaway. So I don't know, like it's like once you finish the 4,000 footers, like that's great, and like you've experienced like the the more popular and the more like quote like epic as far as like maybe views and like the challenge goes, like that the more epic parts at least, but you now have the chance to kind of go back and explore some of those like lesser known spots, I guess. One thing that I really want to do is I think it's the Kilkenny range or ridge rather. I mean I've done like Cabot and I've done what's the other one there? Wambunk or whatever it is. Wambeck. Yeah, like I've done those two peaks obviously, but like there's that trail that kind of connects the two of them, and I really want to hit that. I mean I want to hit the whole Cohos Trail as well. I believe that's part of the Cohos Trail too, but that area like the way northern part too, again like kind of away from most of the traffic. That seems pretty cool as well. So I don't know. Are there any like specific areas? I know I just asked you about like the southern part by Whiteface and Pasconaway, but like are there, and you just named some spots there, are there any other areas like in the Whites that you know of specifically that you think would be cool to check out besides the 4,000 footers?
Well, let's see. I mean, the Pemigewasset Wilderness is kind of where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. That's obviously, you've got the Franconia Range on one side, the Twin Range is kind of on top, and you'll get like Garfield, Galehead, and that whole range up there. So Appalachian Trail through hikers will know that. Mm-hmm. The right side of that, you've got the Bonds. I mean, listen, if you've never been to the White Mountains and you're not familiar with the 4,000 footers, go on Google Bond Cliff right now, and then do yourself a favor and find a way to get out there.
Yeah, man.
It is one of the most incredible hikes you can ever do. And unfortunately, I have to kind of take other people's word for that, because when I did the Bonds, I got no views whatsoever.
Same here, man. Same here.
I got totally socked in, and it was bullshit.
I was super pissed.
It was so freaking disappointing. It was last Columbus Day. I went up for an overnight, my first ever overnight, first time I'd ever like slept in a tent in the woods in the middle of nowhere. And I got these pretty sweet views from Z Cliff the day before, and it was peak foliage, and I'm just thinking, man, oh man, if I just get this view tomorrow, it's going to be so freaking dope. And I woke up at 5 a.m. at the Guyot campsite, and I roll over to West Bond. It was pitch black. I'm in the middle of the woods all by myself with nothing but my headlamp and, a little water bag because I stashed most of my gear at the campsite. And I'm walking through like, man, like, what am I doing out here? Like, I am like literally in the middle of freaking nowhere in the pitch black. And, eventually I get up to West Bond and I just sit on a rock up there and I say, all right, you know what? I'm here. The sun's going to come up and I'm just going to get these sweet views. And it didn't take long for me to realize that it wasn't going to be my day. The clouds, well, they were there and they weren't going anywhere. The forecast had said that may have been a possibility, but my schedule at that point was pretty tight. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to go for it. Maybe I'll get lucky. And I didn't get lucky. So I'm planning on getting back up there probably around a similar time and going to go for it a second time. And I'm going to get that view. I still need a proper Bond Cliff picture. The one I have right now is literally just my silhouette on the cliff, which is actually kind of a badass picture, but you got to get the full view.
Dude, it's freaking sketchy, like on that cliff though. Like when I was up there, or excuse me, before I got up there, I like kind of thought about that. I was like, oh, am I going to try to get like the classic like Bond cliff, like sitting on the edge picture? And it was very apparent to me as soon as I got up there that was not going to happen. Like that shit's,
yeah.
And I'm not even like super bad with heights or anything, but like, yeah, fuck that. Like that shit's pretty crazy.
Dude, that cliff is absolutely terrifying. I mean, even with the clouds, I could just look down and be like, oh geez, like I can't even see where this thing ends. Oh my God.
Yeah, dude, that would probably be even sketchier, honestly. That's pretty epic though. That sounds pretty cool. Yeah, dude, when I did the Pemi Loop, I didn't get a single view the entire time. Like, nothing on Franconia, nothing on the Garfield and the rest, and certainly nothing on Bond Cliff. But I got really lucky because when I went through on my through hike, I think AT probably does like a third of that Pemi Loop. And when I did it the second time, perfect weather. And it was on a through hike, so it probably was a little bit more like important that the weather be nice. At least as far as my comfort goes, so I'm very thankful for that. And I definitely want to go back and do the Pemi Loop again sometime. Like maybe even try to do it in one day, because I did it like as a backpacking trip the first time. So,
dude, if you can do a Pemi Loop in one day, you get major props from me. So I actually, a couple days before I finished my 48, I actually attempted to do a Pemi Loop. It was meant to be my victory lap of sorts, but because of some scheduling stuff, my Cannon hike had to be pushed back, and I just didn't have time to make the Cannon hike or the Pemi Loop work any other time. So I went for it, and let me tell you that it absolutely kicked my ass.
Dude,
it's no joke.
Insane,
I mean,
yeah.
It's like 36 miles or something, and you cover 12 different 4,000 footers. I mean, it's pretty serious. So yeah, just basically real quick how it went for me. So I started around 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning. Get up to Flume, no problem. So there was rain in the forecast, and I knew that basically if I had a chance to get over Lafayette by like 1 o'clock, I'd be fine. And well, it didn't exactly work out that way. I'm not the fastest hiker, unfortunately. So I at least did manage to get to Little Haystack, and the peaks were all totally in the clear. So I got to do the whole, Little Haystack, Lincoln, Lafayette, and just crazy views. Even undercast starting to roll in. The view, it was nuts, like just absolutely crazy. It's not like clear exactly, but you got all these clouds everywhere. Just a different perspective. And then the rain came right after I got over the Lafayette summit.
Oh shit!
And man, let me tell you, that was a very authentic crappy day on the Appalachian Trail type of experience. Because I go, all the way down from Lafayette to the kind of the Garfield Pond area, and it's just like a mile or 2 miles, or it felt like forever. I'm just going down these slick, steep rock slabs, and I'm just getting dumped on at a certain point. I run out of water. That also sucked. I'm like drenched, and I'm like just totally soaked. There's water everywhere except in my water bottle. I literally got to the point where I get to Garfield Pond and I have to just like filter this filthy pond water just because I was so thirsty. It was
I did
awful.
The same freaking thing when I was there.
Then I, climb up to Garfield. By this point, it's socked in. I get to, the Garfield campsite, and I just, ate my dinner, went to sleep. And honestly, the next day, I actually had to call it off. Like, I was supposed to be out there another 2 days, but for one hand, my boots, my hiking shoes are not very good. This has happened a couple of times where anytime I go more than like 15 miles in a weekend, my feet just get all jacked up. So my feet were totally screwed. And, my phone was running low on battery, and my external charger was also running low on battery, which was weird because like it was fully charged before. It was just, honestly, I haven't done, I'm not a thru hiker, so like a lot of people listening to this are probably thinking, who is this guy? But no, it was a great learning experience, but I also knew it was like, this isn't going to be your day. And the weather for the rest of the week, the weather wasn't really that great. And day 2 was all peaks I'd done before, and I really wasn't looking forward to having to do that climb from Gale Head up to South Twin, which any Appalachian Trail hiker is probably familiar with. It sucks. It's 0.8 miles of death. So, I actually called up Phil, and I was like, yo, Phil, can you come get me? I'm done. So he came and rescued me, and that was a great learning experience. But that was cool though, because like I've had a chance. I've told you about the bonds. I've told you about the Franconia kind of super traverse, I guess. So the Presidential Traverse is really the other big major hike that a lot of people doing the 48 will do. Basically you just go over all the presidential peaks. I got a perfect day to do that. I did all of them, and basically it wasn't quite one day. I did the Appalachia Trailhead over Madison, Adams, Jefferson, Washington, Monroe. I actually had to skip Eisenhower because it was getting dark, and then up over Pierce, and I spent the night at the Mitzpah hut because Lake of the Clouds was full. That was awesome. Just a really, really cool experience. I'm up on the Southern Presidentials and the sun is setting. The views were just nuts. That is, that's the Crawford Path is really a really special trail. That's one of the coolest places that you'll find in the Whites. And, I'd highly recommend anybody who, tries to do the 48 to, if not do a full presidential traverse, at least do the Southern kind of stretch from Washington to Pierce or Jackson. And, you won't be disappointed, especially if you get good weather.
How about, what would you say, if any at all, what would you say are like some of the more overrated peaks in the 48?
Overrated? That's tough.
I know it is tough, and it's a very like open question. So don't read into it too much. Just whatever your definition of overrated would be.
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, all of the peaks are spectacular. So, I'm not going to bag on any of them. I would say, honestly, the most overrated peak has got to be Mount Washington, if we're being honest.
Yeah, dude.
It's
exactly
the most
what
popular.
I was thinking too.
It's the most popular, obviously, because it's the tallest. But, the vibe up there is just different. You got all these buildings, you've got a cafeteria, and, not that I have nothing against cafeterias on top of mountains. They can really be a real nice thing to have when you're hungry. The cog railway and the auto road, it's great that it makes it accessible, but when you're doing a presidential traverse, or even if you're just hiking Mount Washington itself, you get up to the top and there's just people in flip-flops and cotton t-shirts. You can't help but be a little bit annoyed. Like, it's like, come on, what are you doing here? Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
And, the crowds, like, I didn't have to worry about I didn't have to wait in line when I got my summit picture, because by the time I got up there, it was pretty late. But, Washington is definitely, I highly recommend it, but it's not the be all and end all. You got, there's some really cool places. Like, I would say Moosilauke would be one I would rank higher. South Twin's got a really cool view. You got the whole Presidentials and the whole Pemigewasset. Bond and Bond Cliff and that whole area is crazy. Mm-hmm. There's some great stuff out there. There's all kinds of different places you can check out.
Oh yeah, for sure. I would definitely agree on Washington being the most overrated too. And mostly because I just hate the concept of waiting in line to take a picture at the summit, or even touch the summit of a mountain. I'm not going to sit here and complain about Washington all day, because there are plenty of people already who do that. But I don't know. Whenever, like, for instance, one of my coworkers, he's not a, I don't want to say he's not a hiker, but he's not like the kind of hiker that would listen to a podcast about hiking, I guess. He's a little bit more casual of a hiker, and he's been like talking about doing Mount Washington, like, oh, I want to do Mount Washington, and I'm like, like I get it, it's like the highest one, but like what, like there's so much, like I've been trying to tell them to do other ones instead, because like there's so many other like better peaks than Washington, you know.
Well,
just for
what?
that
That's,
reason.
Sounds just like me 5 years ago. I mean, I just was like, yo,
Dude, that's literally exactly that's exactly what
I want to go get it, man.
Too.
I want to get the big one, and then along the way discover there's some really other cool ones out there. I mean, it ended up taking me 4 years between when I actually sat down and said, I'm going to hike Mount Washington, and when I actually did it. And like, I don't know why it took that long, but the way it worked out, actually, Washington wound up being my 24th peak. So it was the exact halfway point. And I didn't really plan it that way, but that was kind of nice. Kind of get it right in the middle.
Have you heard about this like new survey or whatever of Mount Tecumseh saying that it's like a little bit under 4,000 feet?
Yes, I have. And in fact, I've actually been trying to put my reporting skills to good use. Basically, the latest there is they've kind of completed the surveys. And at some point, the 4,000 Footers Club is going to meet this fall and basically try to decide what to do.
Really? Okay,
beyond
so
that,
I didn't. Okay, so I'm learning this right now, because I had heard about like the new measurement or whatever, but I hadn't heard anything like beyond that. So I was gonna ask you like what you think about it, like your personal opinion. And everybody, if you disagree with him here, like it's just an opinion. Like it's. I hope nobody would actually like get upset about this. But yeah, like what do you? Your personal opinion, like what do you think they should do as far as either keeping it included or excluding it because of the new reading on the height?
I'll start with sort of the latest data. So the word is that Tecumseh is under 4,000 feet by, I think it's 3,997, and Lincoln and South Hancock are both apparently do not quite meet the 200-foot criteria.
Oh,
so basically,
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so to be a 4,000 footer, you have to have the elevation, but you also have to rise 200 feet above the highest col, or the low point between you and the next tallest peak. So South Hancock obviously is. I don't know if anybody would really miss it, but Lincoln is one of the iconic ones. But on the other hand, Mount Guyot, which is like the elevation's like 4,500 feet, but for a while it wasn't considered to meet that kind of prominence or whatever. Apparently it does. So
interesting.
That's what the data says. But as you know, as a Adirondack guy, sometimes that doesn't necessarily matter. Like what the 4,000 Footers Committee will just have to decide is, are we going to stick to tradition, or are we going to be super, official with it, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what they're going to do, and I'm not even sure what I want them to do. I really do like the idea of Mount Guyot being a 4,000 footer, though. It's like, it definitely deserves to be. I didn't get the views when I was there, but it is a bald peak that would surely have just outstanding views and would be a worthy inclusion. But I don't know if I mean, Lincoln can't, they can't take Lincoln off. If they do, that would be a real shame. And South Hancock, I mean, it makes a cool loop. That's, the Hancocks aren't the most interesting or impressive peaks, but, they've been on the list for a long time. I think, honestly, if there's another peak along with Guyot that was worth adding, I would add those two, make it an even 50, and leave the list the same. Otherwise, maybe you take South Hancock off and add Guyot and keep it at 48. But otherwise, I wouldn't change it too much. I don't think they should take Tecumseh off, and I don't think they should take Lincoln off. I know that's pretty inconsistent, but like you said, that's just my opinion. So, but we'll see, though. I mean, I'm going to be trying to follow this closely. It's going to be a big story. They haven't had a change. The list hasn't changed in about 21 years now.
Damn.
And it hasn't, before that, it was like 20 years since the last change prior. So, it would be pretty big, but, it's a thing. It's, like I said, worth following. But I don't know how it's going to go. That's going to be something that'll be discussed at length over the next couple of months for sure.
Yeah, dude, I didn't know about, about like Guyot and South Hancock and those other ones there. So I think that's pretty cool that you just brought that up. Yeah, I would be down with including Guyot. That's how you pronounce it, right? Guyot?
I always say Guyot, but
Guyot, yeah, whatever.
I don't know. It's
Guyot, like whatever it is.
Yeah, who knows? It's whatever.
I would definitely be down with including that one. I actually did it on my Pemi loop the first time, because the AT goes over it as well, so I've done it twice now. But the first time when I was just doing my 4,000 footers, I didn't realize that it wasn't on the list. Like, I literally just thought it was on the list, and after I got back, I like realized it, and I was like, oh shit, I did that like side trail for no reason now. but it is a cool peak, so I would be down. I would be down to throw it on there. Honestly, yeah. As far as like, I would personally, maybe just because I did the Adirondack 46, kind of like you mentioned a few minutes ago. But for those of you that don't know, there's, I can't remember, maybe like 3 or 4 peaks in the Adirondack 46 that are below 4,000 feet, and there's actually one peak that's above 4,000 feet in the Adirondacks that's not on the list, and again, that's because of surveying errors, and then they kept it just because of tradition. So that does, I'm sure they're going to be like kind of looking at that example pretty closely when they make these decisions, about the New Hampshire 4,000 footers. But I would be down to add Guyot or whatever it is, and the only problem there, and I would also say I think they should just keep Tecumseh and keep South Hancock in Lincoln. The only problem is I feel like 49 just like doesn't have that ring to it, like 48 does for some reason. Like
they got to keep it at 48, or they got to make it 50. If they made 49, that would just be dumb.
So it's like maybe they can like find another peak somewhere and include that. I don't even know shit. Yeah, dude, we're getting towards the end here. But we do have time for a story, so I didn't even need to remind you about this because I always forget to remind people. It sounds like you already have one ready to go, so yeah, dude, let's hear it.
Oh boy, do I! All right, so basically, I mentioned a little bit earlier how I hiked Mount Isolation with Phil, and basically, it was a beautiful day. The hike, we did the one where you go up Glen Boulder over the Davis Trail, Davis Path rather, and just great views throughout. Get up to the top, Mount Isolation. That was kind of the last big peak that I needed to get done, and he's almost finished with his single year grid. So we're both stoked. We both have like a quick summit beer to celebrate, and then I'm like, all right, well, I want to get back down to see Game 7. So we hustle down. We basically run all the way down the Rocky Branch Trail where we'd left his truck, and we're crushing it. Like the trail is like flooded, so we're like bouncing from rock to rock. And I don't normally move this quickly. I basically say, yo, you lead the way. So I got the full Philip Carcia experience and just trying to keep up. And it was great. Like we crushed the whole thing in like, I don't know, 7 miles in like 3 hours, maybe less. I mean, that was by far the fastest pace I've ever maintained. Mm-hmm. And so basically we get down to like the bottom, and I'm like feeling myself. I'm stoked. We're jogging now. Like we're just straight up running. And we're within sight of the parking lot. And he's got his GoPro going because, like I mentioned before, I do some filming so I can make videos of these hikes. And as I'm literally right passing the sign, I just turn around and I just go, let's go. And then I absolutely ate shit. Dude, I tripped over like a branch and fell flat on my face. And Phil just like is dying laughing. He's just like, oh my God.
Perfect way to end,
and naturally he has the GoPro going. So he got the whole thing on film. And oh my God. I've never had anything like that happen to me. It was like, on one hand, it was like really funny, but on the other hand, it's like, come on, man, like, you're out here like, keeping up with one of like the legends of the White Mountains, and this is how you go and like do it at the finish line.
Dude, I'll be honest with you. It was
really funny.
I've seen that video. It is pretty funny. Everyone should go.
Dude, awesome.
Should go watch it. I'll throw a link to Mac's YouTube channel in the show notes. But yeah, dude, that was like super funny because like I'm sure most people listening to this like can maybe not like relating to like how it was right at the end of the hike like that, but like can definitely relate to kind of like a embarrassing or funny fall like that, like when you're just not expecting it at all. So I got a kick out of it for sure.
Yeah, mine just happened to be on camera. Oh well, it happens.
Definitely, dude. That's great. As soon as you mentioned how you were hiking with Philip and doing Mount Isolation, I was like, yep, I know the story he's going for here. So that's great.
Well, it's funny actually. You had just dropped your episode with Alton Echo that morning, and so we were actually talking about like, I wonder like if I was on the show, what would my story be? And I wasn't sure. Then that happened, and I knew.
That's freaking great,
I like to
man.
joke, though, because as I mentioned before, I hate to bring up painful memories, but Bruins didn't do so hot in Game 7 later that day. So the next morning I texted Phil. I was just like, yeah, dude, just in case you didn't see it yourself, Bruins face planted worse than I did yesterday.
Ouch.
Rough.
Ouch. Just when I had kind of forgotten about it, too.
Dude, it's a new season coming up, though. It's a whole new year.
Dude, I was just talking about it with my roommate today. It's like freaking month until hockey starts again. A month until my listeners have to hear me mention that in passing every now and again. So,
dude, it's like 4 days until the Patriots opening night, dropping banner, the new championship banner. So
yeah, dude, you're gonna be.
That's like my whole life these days. So I'm looking forward to getting back out on the trail. I haven't been able to hike since Cannon. It's just been crazy.
Oh, damn.
But looking forward to getting back out there. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think we're gonna kind of wrap it up here. So why don't you give yourself a plug real quick? Where can people go to find you on YouTube and other social media sites?
So if you want to follow me on Instagram, that's where you'll find all my hiking pictures and stuff. My handle is just my name, Mac Cerullo, MacCerullo. My YouTube username is very creative. It's also my name, except capitalized and with a space. If you search all my videos are just called Hiking the 4,000 Footers, and then whatever the name of the mountain is. So you can just search that. It shouldn't be that difficult to find. It's not a very big channel. I mean, most of my videos typically get like 100 views, if that. But honestly, it's fun. Just kind of go back and look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's what it looked like that day. You can also, if you're more interested in kind of following my, we'll say my professional stuff, my Twitter is @Mac Cerullo. And if you're a Patriots fan, or if you happen to have an interest in high school sports in Greater Newburyport, then you can give me a follow there. And I'm also going to give you another quick plug. So my if you've followed my videos, you'll notice I have a couple of labs, Allie and Stella. Allie's a 2-year-old black lab who's come on a couple hikes with me, and Stella is a 6-month-old silver lab. Allie is a competitive duck diver, and actually just a couple weeks ago, my wife took her down to ESPN's campus in Bristol, and they were like competing on TV. So give them a bit of a plug. Their Instagram is @thelabraduo_Allie Stella, and you should definitely follow them because they're adorable, and they, who doesn't love dogs, honestly? So,
dude, that's awesome. I think you're the first person to plug a pet social media, and you're also 44 episodes in. I believe you're the first person to plug a Twitter at the end of the episode too. So that's awesome. Breaking some records here.
That's kind of funny. Well, to be fair, Alton's account is basically a dog account with Cole anyway, so I don't think I'm exactly breaking new ground here. Yeah,
I mean, that's fair. Shit, dude. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's don't hang up on me quite yet, but I'm gonna sign off now. So everybody listening, thank you very much and have a good one.